Aquí estamos. Who knows what will happen? Ay, Dios mío. I'm going to try to call Wilson right now.
Okay.
Como yo no hice la conexión inicial, but then I realized Bev is not. Let me see if he responds. So we'll see. And I've got let's see if I can post this.
I'm putting together our backstage agenda. Because I need to follow my own notes somewhere.
Yeah. So the changes el programa, no? Because I redid it according to, Hannah and Sean. And so do you want me to post that on the chat or?
Yeah, or you can post it in this Google Doc if you can click on it at the same time.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever works for you.
Wilson's not responding. Problem is that I don't know if he has an iPhone. Si no, no lo puedo llamar. Let me try. Because I'm not sure that Bev got to send him the link,
I know. This doesn't feel good for for where we at 20 minutes away from our event starting. I feel like
so I can't call him because he doesn't have an iPhone.
Do you want me to call him?
Try calling him from the iPhone and then from phone to phone, because I tried. I texted him and by WhatsApp. So, and he hasn't read it yet. I'm trying to find the document.
I'm building our backstage agenda now too.
Yeah, let me add to the Google document if I can get into the chat. Okay, so.
The mailbox is full. It won't take message that you didn't pick up. I'll text him.
Yeah, okay. And then I have, in the meantime, let me paste. There's Hannah. Okay, so let me try to see where my. Hey, Hannah. Okay, so let me, I did post. Okay, let me try to welcoming, guided conversation.
I know we're trying to firm up the backstage agenda. We have some red flags. Wilson has not registered for the event and has, there's the backstage agenda.
And I added some information below. And sorry, Hannah, I got your note afterwards about when someone suggested they do the Q&A, I thought it was Melina. So, but we're good. So if you want to take a look at the plan, and I'll fill in the Word document. So, Q&A, that would be fun.
So I'm going to elevate both of you to co-host. And basically when people come into the meeting, I set it up so that they come into a waiting room and we need to give them permission to enter. So if I'm blabbing the stuff at the beginning, it's hard for me to do that at the same time. So both of you should just click on let them in. I'm going to turn off the doorbell to that. So it means you just have to pay attention throughout the meeting because a little sign appears at the top of your screen.
Comments. Okay, so I think I updated the backstage. Let me see here, 45 minutes. Let's see what you all think. Okay. Okay, so let's say that Wilson does not show up.
Yeah.
And I don't want to bother Bev, but should I call her?
No, I would just leave her alone. We have his contact information. He didn't answer his phone. It's not going to be any different if Bev calls him than if we do. I sent him a text message saying this is one of the event organizers for today's 2 p.m. meeting. I'll check your WhatsApp to get a link to the event.
Yep. Make sure.
Okay. We'll basically, I think we should still have our other guest speaker. We'll just have a shorter dialogue with him. And we could schedule a follow-up if there's energy. When we'll just say, unfortunately, one of our speakers had trouble making it to the meeting today.
So what about this? I like that idea. So we say exactly that, right? But maybe say, for future forums, right? Miguel, hazme un gran favor. Puedes llamar a Wilson because we can't get a hold of him. So he may answer your phone. He needs to check his WhatsApp because I sent him a link to join us for the forum at 2 p.m. Today. Yeah, he knows about it, but just tell him to check his WhatsApp.
It's 15 minutes, huh?
I know, but lo que pasa es que it's complicated, but just he'll probably pick up your phone. Bye. So I talked to Mike because Mike has a relationship with Wilson, and there was we helped him. So Wilson may pick up his, he recognizes the number, right? And so it's the same message for Wilson to check WhatsApp for a link.
Sounds good.
My husband says, you realize that that's in 15 minutes. I said, it's a long story. I'll tell you tonight. But, this is part of, working with our community friends and activism, so I think that if we get, it sounds like James will give a wonderful context of it all. That's just as important. I mean, the added voices of those on the ground are most welcome, but
yes, and
in the action steps, I think that's, but
so, and then we'll debrief our own learning and where we went wrong at our next meeting.
Well, but I think it's, I wouldn't emphasize Yeah, not what went wrong, but really, what are the strategies if we opt for emergency programs responding, because this will always be the case, right? If something hits the media and there's an issue and we say, hey, we may just have a few days, right? But
Yeah.
how should the strategy, things like, maybe graphics are not important, something like that, we'll see, right? So so does the program or the backstage idea, does that look good?
Yeah, it looks good to me.
Yeah, which I think will mean, I think that it'll be, Melina, and then Sean can kind of step in, right? If Wilson's not with us, Wilson may join us later, right? Because that way introduces James, has the conversation with James, and then, right?
Yeah, and I think that people joining us are interested in this issue, and so I'm happy to move Q&A to more of a discussion format if it seems like we have a lot of time.
Okay, great, yeah. And so I'm gonna say, hey, question, how did the march go yesterday? The rally and
It was great.
Seneca Falls, was it good?
It was very nice. I mean, it was a little bit, it wasn't like as fiery as I was craving, but it was delightful to be with so many people. There were, I think, I would guess like 200. And so there were speeches, and then there was a march. They split the group to line up against two sidewalks, so we walked all the way down. But the instructions from the organizers on what to do and how to end it were fuzzy. So we basically marched. Then we all stopped and were lined against the street, and then nothing. So we, as in our usual fashion, had a bunch of chants. Ala had her drum. And so Hannah, Ala, and Mona walked up and down the street with their drum chanting and got basically the entire crowd chanting. And then we realized that people were just sort of leaving from where they were, and it was a little disappointing. Like, you came to want to be part of something, and then it just ends without. So we basically turned around and walked back to the starting point, leading with the drum and the banner, and then let it end at that point. So yeah. I don't know. I thought we should probably follow up with the organizers and connect with them a little bit, because they didn't know. Jess had a good conversation, but she didn't plug GWA. So I think they somehow don't have Geneva Women's Assembly like on their map loud and clear in a way that would be helpful to them, because they were really excited about
seeing. I talked to them the last. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think they were. The governor came, Alejandra. So I think they were just really focused on their speeches.
The governor was there?
Yeah, she spoke. On their speeches and getting the photo ops and video at the rally. Yeah. And I don't think they thought for a second about what was going to happen after that, except that they clearly had been told by the Seneca Falls police they couldn't march in the street. And I don't know what you think, Melina. There must have been a dozen officers like holding people back from.
Oh yeah, the officers were like on it with their keeping people out of the street.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's like how things end is always a challenge. A good end to a movie, a good end to a story or to a novel. That I think marches, because I usually have that feeling. The times I've been to Washington and the big rallies, there's always at the end it ends, right? And so so how do you? It's a challenge to. It should end. I mean, the rally and the speakers. But I guess the recognition, and I see it all the time in in events on campus and other campuses, right? And so that's why my rule is you either make sure you have a list and thank everybody by name, or you just send a big saying thank you for all of those who supported us, and that's it. Because otherwise you're bound to, there should always be one designated person to either remind some, because it's because then there's the deflation of those who helped organize, right? Like, gee, you didn't mention us. Not that you do it for that reason, right? But
I thought one of the very cool things was there were so many young people there. I talked to a number of people who said it was their first protest ever. I talked to a couple women who come all the way from Binghamton. And even though there was a rally in Binghamton, they really wanted to be in Seneca Falls for this moment. So yeah, I think as many critiques as I perhaps have about the event itself, I have some optimism about the movement and people's energy for really fighting back.
Yeah.
I can't believe I missed the governor talking. I heard somebody basically saying, "Oh, thanks to the governor, this is not an issue in the state of New York." But I didn't realize that it was like tied to her. Did she talk first? Because I came about 15 minutes late. Was she at the beginning or in the middle?
I don't know. I have to say, I found the speeches hard to hear. The only one I really keyed into was Mae Farnsworth, and I thought she was just wonderful.
I thought Mae was great.
National dimensions, and she had the clearest sort of fighting rally type speech, and people really responded. It was clear that's what they were there for. And I really appreciated her talking about Latin America too. They're really those women are just leading on this struggle.
I really enjoyed the young Black women who spoke. There was one woman who it was like the first time she'd ever spoken in public, and the biggest audience she'd ever seen. She said this is a really large audience, and then I got the feeling she was about to pass out. So everybody was like, woohoo, to cheer her on.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So Sean is here. Hey, Sean. So Mike called Wilson, mailbox is full, didn't pick up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try WhatsApp again, okay?
So yeah.
Oh, I got an answer. Wait, I think.
There's our backstage plan. We are a little uncertain about if Wilson is going to make it. So we might have a shorter event with one main speaker, in which case we'll turn it more into a dialogue and discussion session. And we have 12 people, including us, registered. And here comes Katya. Sean, I'm going to elevate you to co-host as well, just in case we need backup support. I'm going to be saying the opening remarks at the beginning. So I'll need your all's eyes on the waiting room to help let people in.
Do we have, is Tim going to join us today?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Is Kusla going to do their class on like Haitian history again?
No, in fact, Tim has left that position. So there's a new coordinator. But yeah, Kimberly, who helped teach it, wanted to come, but she's incredibly slow to check her email, and she didn't register. So it might be nice to just plug a Kuslar, the role that they have, and to connect to their newsletters online, because you can learn all sorts of things about Haiti there. Code Pink has their Haiti campaign going. And of course, people could just join our Rapid Response Network listserv so that they can be informed about upcoming events. Alejandra, I muted you just so we could hear ourselves talking. Feel free to unmute yourself whenever you need.
Okay, sorry, too many gadgets in the same space, but let me see, Katya, let me put the gallery as gallery. So, okay. Hey, Katya, good to see you. How are you feeling?
Oddly enough, it's still kind of straggling on, but mostly better. Yeah. I'm making some soup right now if I turn my video off, but I'll be listening in and excited that you guys planned this and so quickly, and that's nice. I think it helps to be able to get a more immediate sense of.
Yeah, I think we're rusty at it, but we'll get better.
Yeah, we're not sure entirely that it's going to work. But no, not yet. Let's wait. That's a guest, so that's McKay.
So speakers, yes. Everyone else, no.
Exactly, until the time begins. I'll send him a message saying we'll be starting at 2.
Okay, so let's review two scenarios, one with Wilson and one without Wilson, right? So Melina bid on the rapid response network. Do you want me to then jump in and say something? I'm in Guatemala, here we are, and this is an urgent, it's kind of affecting both community, all these communities, right? I'll come up with something. And then Sean, you can, since you have the connection with James, and feel free to choose the questions, right? Or he may want to just say, hey, let me talk. Wilson doesn't join us. James can speak a little bit longer, right? Now, I don't think we should say that Wilson won't join us until, I don't know how to phrase that. We're waiting. I don't want him to look bad, right? We're waiting for, right? I don't know what the diplomatic way of saying that.
We can just say that, let's see, how can we say it?
I don't know, maybe just like obviously this is a emergency educational session we've called, and people involved in fighting for Haitian immigrants are of course also really busy in this moment. So we're hopeful that Wilson will be able to join us, but we're thrilled to have James here, and we'll have a wonderful conversation either way kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I have two slides to show. One is just the graphic for the event, and the other is just our mission statement with our sort of 3 pillars.
And so, okay, so James, guided conversation, questions, and then Hannah, you then will be the Q&A, right? And you're a pro at that. And I'm sorry, I misinterpreted the WhatsApp. I thought that it was Melina suggesting that she would do the Q&A, so that's why I put that in the plan. And then, and Katia, you just want to be with us, which is great. So good. Now, Kathleen, if she can't join us, the wrap up, Hannah, would you feel comfortable just closing it up? No, we got the action steps. So Q&A, and then we got action steps, right? Should that be just one unit, or what do you all think?
Sean's on action steps.
Okay, so you'll switch. So you go back and
okay.
So okay, good.
I'll just
okay, yeah.
hand it off.
And if Kathleen doesn't join us, Melina, do you want to close up with the last remarks, or Sean?
Why don't you do it?
Me? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, if Kathleen is with us, then absolutely, right? And also, I just say thank you very much. Be on the lookout. Please check out our Facebook page. And then I will, make a little bit of a joke, in a way, to say, rapid response. We've worked, when ICE is in the area, we're really moving forward towards, if something hits the media, when there's a human situation that needs a response, we'll be there. So be on the lookout for notes from us. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
During the welcome, I was just going to introduce Finger Lakes Rapid Response as host, ask people where they're Zooming from today and what organizations they represent to type in the chat. Or should we go around in a circle? Because so far it's only 3 people. Or why did you come to the session, or what orgs do you represent?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I vote chat. I think, these kinds of events, sometimes people are planning on multitasking or not having their camera on. And so we'll just give people a little space with my vote.
Should we try to ask? Well, that's probably a factor, right? Because we'll always have that challenge because we do this, it's urgent. We'll, getting the word out and for people to know, the things happen. Maybe Sunday a good time for these things. I don't know, but we'll play by ear. Let's all break a leg.
Okay, so far, so we have 4 people.
That's good.
Should I go ahead and let them in?
Yeah.
Shall I, should I display the PowerPoint real quick?
Should we all face away from the camera so it just looks like there's something really cool behind us?
Okay. All right. Can you all hear the doorbell when it rings?
Yes. Can I let James in?
Yeah, go ahead and let James in so we can say hello. I'm taking off the doorbell sound. James, welcome.
Welcome.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and let everybody in, if that's okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome, welcome.
Hello.
Hello. I'm going to go ahead and start our event for the day. I'm going to introduce myself and the host, and then we'll get started. But first of all, welcome to all of you. I know you're coming in from all over, and we're looking forward to getting to know you. And so just a few words before we get started here. This event today is an opportunity for us to have a discussion and hear some panelists to get beyond the headlines. Haitian immigrants and U.S. exclusionary policy. Why does the U.S. turn its back on Haiti? I think this is obvious to many of us, and yet we wanted to provide an opportunity in this important moment to respond in a meaningful way, to create a place where we can talk in community to make sense of the politics of the moment. And so I am pleased to welcome you. My name is Melina Ivanchikova. I'm an organizer out of Geneva, New York, in the Finger Lakes region. And we are the Finger Lakes Rapid Response Network. The network is a Finger Lakes regional team coming together to respond to immediate needs caused by immigration policies that destroy people's lives. And so essentially we formed to respond in particular to the way that ICE has been disruptive in our local communities across the region, deporting people right and left. And then what this means for our communities, there's always an aftermath, which is where we end up doing most of our work, supporting our families, and also doing some community education work to help people understand the issues at stake, what is going on in our immigration system at this moment, and what we can do about it. And so today is us living into our emergency response in a different way. We wanted to try an emergency response educational forum. And so we've put this together on the fly and are absolutely delighted to welcome James Louis Charles as our guest speaker today, and possibly Wilson, who has not made it quite yet onto our call, but should be arriving hopefully. Okay, so on that note, if there are other organizers with me on this call, so let me invite them to just wave really quickly. And before I hand it over to Alejandra, I wanted to ask all of you to introduce yourselves in the chat. So if you would please let us know where you are Zooming from today, why you came to the session, and which organizations you are a part of, if that's relevant to your work. And I should also mention that Finger Lakes Rapid Response Network itself is a coalition group. So all of our members represent other groups in addition to the Finger Lakes Rapid Response Network. So if you would like to introduce your groups, my dear colleagues, please go ahead and place those in the chat. And sorry, one more note, everyone. I am recording this session, and this is so that we can share especially what our guest speakers have to say. We'll edit the video a little bit, but we would like to be able to share it with a broader audience if possible. All right, on that note, Alejandra, over to you whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Melina, and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for, we don't want to say last minute, but this is emergency. We're learning to respond, a part of our community effort. So thank you for joining us, and we'll keep at it. So I'm actually speaking to you all from Guatemala, and right in the Northern Triangle. And I just want to see if I can show you, but this is front page newspaper. You can see the image, right, of a Haitian immigrant. And then it's interesting to see the wording. I don't know if this is the other way around, but I'll translate. The term is Haitians being expelled from the U.S. And so I think it's interesting to see, yes, the media in the U.S., there's the imagery that we've all seen that just makes this, we should be just outraged and reflect, as we said in our description, and take action. From Guatemala comments on, right, the inhumane treatment. And it is, in a way, Haitians are getting deported back to Haiti, but they're also coming back through Mexico to Guatemala. And so this is a shared responsibility. And the big concern is how the U.S. continues with Title 42, and we'll talk about that, to just ship people back elsewhere, outside our borders here. And I think it's an important moment to say what is the regional, if not global, responsibility of our country, right? And so I just wanted to put that out there. And so this is in the spirit of that. We are here to talk about the issue. It's not just talking, although that's very important, it's reflecting. And we hope that at the end, we'll leave with action steps and ideas. And very much, as a Central American myself, I was the first one to think, not the first one, but I kept thinking, my goodness, we think of Central Americans, and that's a great tragedy as well. But what happens when it's our Haitian brothers and sisters, right? Because Black lives matter, right? And Black lives and bodies that try to cross the border matter. And it's in that spirit that we're here today. And we're very grateful that you've joined us. And now up to Sean and Shemlui. And bienvenue, bienvenidos a todos. Okay, Sean, your turn, my friend.
Sean, wait, start again.
And that's all I got to say about that. Okay. So my name is Sean Talent. I am the regional coordinator for Rural and Migrant Ministry, of Western New York for Rural and Migrant Ministry. And I have the pleasure of introducing James Luis Charles, who I met when we were students together in Costa Rica at the United Nations the UN mandated University for Peace. I had just come out of Mexico, where I'd been a part of a student leadership or a leadership through sports program for youth, and had been really enthralled by some of the way there was a specific organization in Africa that was using sports to educate students, young people, about AIDS and health issues. And when I was in Costa Rica, James joined us in the second semester, and he had been running a similar program out of Haiti, doing leadership and education through sports. So without further ado, James is a Haitian American from the DMV area in Haiti, who decided to move back to Haiti a few years ago to be of service to his country of birth. He was the country director of a youth organization in Léogâne that advances leadership through soccer and education. He's currently an athletic director and a social studies instructor at American School in Port-au-Prince. And he's also working on a soccer academy project modeled after the successful Right to Dream Academy in Ghana, with an emphasis on the best training, the best education, and on developing socially focused and purpose-driven leaders. So, James, thank you for joining us today. I think we have many questions. The first thing that everybody ought to know is there is a thunderstorm in Haiti right now. So if we lose the connection, we lose the connection. But hopefully you'll be here. So the first question is, can you just tell us a bit about you and your experience as a Haitian in the United States and the impact that has had on you back in Haiti?
Sean, is there a way you could post the question in the chat? Because James, we lost James while you uttered the question, but he's back.
I'm back.
Okay.
I'm back. So
James.
Sorry, guy. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. So
yes,
the question is, tell us a bit about you.
Okay. Before I get started, guys, I would like to apologize because we're having a thunderstorm in Haiti. So I don't know if, in the event that I lose connection again, so I just wanted to let you know. Thank you again for this opportunity, and thank you, Sean, for getting in touch with me. As I'm sure Sean already mentioned, my name is James Louis Charles. I am a Haitian American. I was born in Haiti. I moved to the US when I was 13. And sports has always been a part of my life. And I wanted to come back to Haiti and use sports as a means for social change and education. So I made the choice about 5 years ago to do a master in sports for social change, which is where I met Sean at UP in Costa Rica. And then while I was given this opportunity to come back to Haiti to run an organization outside of Port-au-Prince in Léogâne, which is where the epicenter happened in 2010, the epicenter of the earthquake, which was mostly destroyed. So much to my surprise, 7 years later, when I go to Haiti, much to my surprise, nothing has really changed in Port-au-Prince as a result of the earthquake. Yeah, I've seen the changes, and quite frankly, the situation in Haiti that's causing people to leave has gotten worse since the earthquake. And I would like the opportunity to discuss this some more. And most importantly, I want to thank you guys for giving me this opportunity. And not only that, for also giving Haiti a voice and also joining this fight that we've been having, because sometimes we have the impression that we are alone in this fight. We've been mentioning U.S. policy toward Haiti, not just immigration policy toward Haiti, but also U.S. policy toward Haiti as being very, for lack of a better term, racist. So I really, really appreciate the fact that you are giving me, not just giving me this opportunity, but you are also raising this concern. Thank you.
So the next question, and I'll just keep these questions posted in the chats in case you get locked out again. What challenges exist in Haiti that push so many Haitians to move abroad? Where do they go and why? Okay, so this is such a loaded question. I mean, the current situation in Haiti really has its roots since 2010, but even way before that, but we're gonna stick to 2010. When the earthquake happened in 2010, it was decided that, the best way to help the country by outside powers was to use what Haiti has to offer the most, which is its young population as cheap labor. So as such, countries like Brazil, which was the first country to open their borders to Haiti, and Brazil at the time, the economy was booming. They were getting ready for the World Cup and also for the Olympics. So they started to give visas to hundreds of thousands of Haitians to go down to Brazil. And seeing how the situation in Haiti at the time was pretty desperate right after the earthquake, many young Haitians decided to take on the opportunity. As I mentioned before, I was running this organization that uses sports for development.
It was an organization for kids between 8 to 18. And a lot of them just went, after they turned 18, 19. And there were lines almost on a daily basis outside of the airport that would go for miles, where Haitians would try to leave Haiti. So then came Chile. Chile offered the same opportunity. So Haitians, again, started to go to Chile. But what we've learned, especially with the situation with the Dominican Republic, when it comes to cheap labor, when there's a need for cheap labor, they open their borders. But when for whatever reason they don't need you, they find ways to kick you out, or xenophobia go up, racism go up in those countries. So this has been the situation that many of these migrants have been facing in those countries in the last 4 or 5 years or so, where they are no longer wanted. So this is what has led many Haitian migrants to take on this treacherous route to go down to make it to the United States, where they already have family members.
I know that one of the reasons, or one of the primary sources of immigration, like local immigration for Haitians here, is the apple fields up in Wolcott area. So that's how we got most of our Haitians. As you mentioned, it was cheap labor and temporary visas. So they're not, the Haitians that we get aren't being given rights. They're being given 3 to 6 months at a time, with the expectation that they'll be required to go back to Haiti when they finish that. And as we know, sometimes people go back, sometimes people do not. But I believe that was our initial income for, or that's where we got our Haitians that have stayed in Rochester, Geneva, throughout the area. I see that James is back again. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to that, or should I ask the next question?
I'm sorry, I missed a small portion of that, but go ahead and ask your next question.
Yeah, so I just mentioned that the Haitians we have locally often are cheap labor for apple crops and come on short-term visas with little access to rights. That's our local connection to Haiti. Very much in line with what you said. Okay. So the third question that I have is, what impact has the change from the Trump to Biden administrations had in the Haitian community? And how does this connect to historical U.S. policy on Haiti?
Okay, so, well, we all know what Trump said about Haiti. As such, the message was pretty clear that we were not welcome. Okay, and in addition to that, with the Title 42, which, as far as I understand, Title 42 allows the United States to deny entry due to a pandemic situation. And initially, with the Biden administration, Haitians took that to mean, okay, maybe they were welcome, maybe they should take the risk. But I have to say, between February to up until a few weeks ago, there were 37 deportations flights to Haiti. Within the last 2 weeks alone, there has been 57 deportation flights to Haiti. So that's nearly, in such a short period, the Biden administration has deported as many Haitians as the Trump administration deported in a whole year. So, and for the Biden administration to continue this Title 42 policy as a reason to deny Haitians entry, or even the right to apply for asylum, it's hugely controversial, because there's been a history of the CDC and past US administrations using pandemic situation or viruses as a reason to deny specifically Haitian entry. We all, for those of you who don't know, in the 1980s, they said Haitian had AIDS. This is something that seriously affected me as a Haitian migrant in the United States in that period, and many other Haitians that migrated to the United States during that period. And it took us almost 20 years to overcome that fact. So we see it as another reason as to why they're keeping Haitians away from the United States. And especially because a couple of weeks ago, mysteriously, the CDC labeled Haiti a level 4 COVID situation, while all the numbers seem to indicate that COVID in Haiti is one of the lowest in the region. So that took Haitians by surprise. So it's for us, for the Biden administration to continue the Trump policy toward Haiti is very, very controversial, but also in line with past U.S. democratic governments when it comes to Haitian immigration policies, because the Clinton administration did the same in 1994 when thousands of Haitians were trying to reach Florida, and they put them.
Still there, James?
I think we lost him, but do you want to
He'll
add
sign
a
back in,
comment
yeah.
while we wait for him to try to get back?
Yeah. So I know a lot of us like to consider the Republicans to be harsher on immigration policy than the Democrats. But if we think back to Obama, we all know that Obama was considered by many to be the deporter in chief. So as we look to U.S. immigration policy, it's important to remember that the party of the administration doesn't mean a lot. Oftentimes, you'll have things speed up or slow down a little bit, but none of the revisions that need to happen to make a more humane immigration policy or refugee policy ever seem to be accomplished, regardless of who's in charge. So this goes above and beyond party. This is, like, I think, as we've heard, connects to the racist policy decisions that are repeated throughout our government, like our governing decisions. So James, you were saying, let's see, do you want to continue where?
Sorry, I don't know where I got cut off, but basically I wanted to say that the Clinton administration, we were quite surprised back then, and just like we are now with the Biden administration, that they would continue social policy of denying Haitians entry. And for
Darn.
So when we look at the effects of global policies, one of those affects climate change, and we all know that bigger storms lead to power outages and weather problems in certain parts of the world. I know when I lived in Mexico, a rainstorm often took down our internet, and people didn't understand quite why. James says that he's going to try to call in on his phone to see if he gets a better connection. So I will continue just talking for a couple seconds. No, so we can see, like, we can make that connection between global climate policy and climate justice issues, and how race plays in there. So we see racism in U.S. policy, in our health policy, in our immigration policy, in our refugee policy, and even in our climate policy. And we know that countries like Haiti, that are in the path of many, many, many hurricanes, often have times competing with infrastructure. James, can you hear me all right?
Yes, sorry, I hear you. I'm using my phone, so hopefully there won't be any more disturbance.
Okay, you were telling us about the Clinton administration.
Yes, what I was saying is the Clinton administration had continued the Reagan administration's policy of denying Haitians entry due to AIDS in the 1990s. And as such, we are disturbed by the fact that the Biden administration would continue the Trump's policy of denying Haitians the opportunity to even apply for asylum for reasons that are health related as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that people ask, it's like we often see in the headlines in the United States, TPS. We use a TPS designation. Why does the US use TPS designation instead of a refugee designation? And why is this important for Haitians?
That's a very good question. I'm not an immigration expert, but from what I understand, the TPS designation is meant to extend the stay of the temporary stay of migrants or refugees in the United States due to social unrest, human rights violations, and certain conditions, which really applies to Haiti at the moment. Last May, the Biden administration was able to extend TPS to most Haitians. And I believe that was for 15 months. So as I understand it, the distinction between refugee status and TPS is due to the fact that people with TPS status will be returned to the country as when the country is stable enough, versus to be able to apply for us, to be able to apply for refugee status, especially in this case for asylum. It doesn't necessarily mean that the refugees will be returned to Haiti when the country is stable. And I don't know what you know about Haiti, but the situation in the last couple of years has seriously deteriorated. And what makes it interesting is also the fact that the U.S. policy toward Haiti is a big cause of that.
Yeah, I know one of the things that we've discussed in our classes back in the day was so when a country uses a refugee designation, there are international human rights laws that are applied and benefits that a country is required to give somebody who's been designated as a refugee. And the TPS, the temporary protected status, which the US likes to give, goes above and beyond who they might be required to give refugee status to, but it comes with no guaranteed rights. So that's just like in many ways, what the US will do is give a country going through a climate crisis or a humanitarian crisis or a political crisis a TPS status, which allows them to, allows us to say, yeah, there's a problem, but it doesn't create any obligations for the US federal government to provide any rights for the people that we take on. And instead of taking them on permanently, we take them on partially. And I know it's just, again, one of those things where if we look at US policy globally, where do refugees come from and where do TPS residents or recipients come from? We can often break this down to racial lines. So unless we're looking at a genocide, we're going to tend to stick TPS on people from Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Haiti. And it's also one of the ways that the United States is, and the global community is avoiding giving refugee status to climate refugees, because climate refugee status is not currently protected under international law. So it's the TPS is, again, another example of racism in foreign policy. James, here's a fun one. Why does the world seem to hate Haiti?
Good question. I wonder why. But again, unless you want me to go into a history lesson, and I am a history teacher, so it would appear that, because Haiti was the first country to abolish slavery in 1804. And then, for me as a Haitian, I like to refer to the death of independence that France extorted out of us in 1825, which amounts to $25 billion as a sentence of poverty. Because since that period, it really doesn't matter what type of government that we had. Many outsiders, many foreign powers were able to humiliate us, use any type of events really to humiliate us. The U.S. occupation in 1915 was a major humiliating event for us. And for the U.S. to continually impose itself into our political situation, which has been the case in the last 30 years. In 2004, for the bicentennial of Haiti, we had the president of Haiti that was still making claim for France to repay that debt. And within a few months, he claimed he was kidnapped. So again, the situation that you just had this past summer, where a president, well, granted he was a controversial president to begin with, was assassinated in his own house, where mercenaries literally walked through the front door without one shot being fired. There's been precedents by this already set by the United States when it comes to Haiti. So really at this moment, it is as if we are a country in name, but in name only. In the last 25 years, we've been under US/UN occupation. And today, the country is poorer than ever before. The country has no functioning institutions, is loaded with gangs that were mainly supported by the governing body, the governing president, the ruling president, which in turn were supported by the United States. So honestly, I wish I could give you a definite answer, but we are tired of being humiliated on a world level. And now to have Haitians literally having to cross 8, 9, 10 countries, 11 countries just to make it to your borders. For us as Haitians, it's beyond being humiliated. We are tired of it. We want our country back, and we would like, I don't know, how does one go to get their country back? Who do we go to complain to say that US policy has been killing us, has been unfair to us? No, this is a very, very, very serious question.
I think that's important. Is most of us on this call are currently located in the United States, and being in the U.S., we have the power, be it as little as it may feel like, we have the ability to influence U.S. foreign policy in a way that the rest of the world cannot. So I think that's one of the obligations that we as Americans or as U.S. residents should feel, not as Americans, as U.S. citizens and U.S. residents should feel, to do something, like Alejandra said, for our Haitian brothers and sisters, because we can. You and I talked earlier a little bit about what's the impact of the Haitians that are being deported from the U.S. back to Haiti. I know we saw what happened when El Salvadorans were deported from Los Angeles and California and parts of the Southwest U.S. back to El Salvador after the war, after the Civil War, and the impact that's had on Central American politics. What do you worry about, or what do you think about? What do you think may happen with the Haitian immigrants and refugees that are being sent back to Haiti at this point?
Well, what was the reason for them to leave to begin with? Okay, the reality of it is there's no opportunities in Haiti. Haiti has one of the youngest population in the region. I think I read somewhere that 60% of the population is under the age of 25. Okay, so there's this belief that most of the migrants that are leaving are just high school level migrants and so on, trying to seek refuge in wherever but Haiti. But the reality of it is, again, I read somewhere that almost 50% of the people that have left Haiti, whether they went to Chile or whether they went to Brazil, and now they're trying to make it to the United States, or college educated. Some of them have a certain level of college education. Some of them have graduated college. And yeah, so you can only imagine the impact that has on a country that is trying to rebuild itself, where its most capable citizens are leaving. And this has been a policy that favors everyone, including the Haitian government, because it means there's one less mouth for them to feed in Haiti, or one less person for them to worry about in Haiti, while they are stealing most of the aid or the resources that's given to them. So, you know, now to then return these people, you know, situations where they left Haiti 10 years ago, okay? And the situation is worse. So when they left 10 years ago to now, the situation has gotten so worse that literally, if you are a young person in Haiti, you have two options, which is you leave Haiti or you join a gang. So you can only imagine what that is going to cause the already volatile security situation in Haiti. I think I read yesterday that about 80,000 Haitians are stuck somewhere between Colombia and Panama right now. And I don't know if the fact that there's been so many deportations in the last couple of weeks, if that will defer them or that will change their mind. But the reality of it is, you know, this is no longer a US situation. This is a regional hemispheric situation. And the only solution is to allow Haitians the opportunity to reach their dreams in Haiti, which means US policy needs to change towards Haiti, because it's killing us. It's not helping us.
Okay. I think, is there anything you'd like to add really quick before we open up to the group for questions?
Yeah, the last thing that I would like to add is US policy toward Haiti has always been to do what is necessary in US interest to deter Haitians from leaving Haiti. And, you know, our own waters, our own territorial waters in Haiti are being guarded by US Coast Guard. You know, right after the earthquake, one of the first policies that the Obama administration implemented was to cordon off Haiti with Coast Guard so that Haitians do not leave Haiti. That policy is still in place today. If, you know, you still have Haiti, you still have Haitians trying to leave Haiti by boat. They don't make it far because they get intercepted. Meanwhile, since 1994, since the coup d'etat in 1994, you've had an arms embargo in Haiti. So it's mind-boggling to me that Haitians can be intercepted at sea, while arms coming mainly from the United States has been flooding the country. So again, US policy needs to be re-examined because it is killing us in Haiti. That's pretty much what I wanted to say.
And I promise we'll come back to a little bit more positive note, but it's important to understand the problem. And you can't sugarcoat it. Like we know what the problem is. This is something that's been going on for a very long time, and it's just the same form. But I think I'm going to hand my mic back to Melina. And
thank you so much, Sean. That was really wonderful. I'm going to hand it right over to Hannah, who will facilitate our Q&A for us.
I James, thank you so much for those comments. It's a real honor to have you joining us today, and I think you've helped to put into sharp relief the reason for calling this emergency educational session, and we'll end with doing some thinking together about next steps and how those of us here in the U.S. Can build toward a more just future for the people of Haiti. So we have a small and committed group here today, and a wonderful expert in James, and so I think we can handle this portion as a conversation. So I know James is willing to answer more questions. So if people want to share those questions in the chat, I'm happy to read them out. Or if you want to verbalize your question, you can just go ahead and put your name in the chat or unmute yourself, and I'll add you to our stack. But I think we also can use this as a space for discussion. I know we have other people on the call who have experience working with Haitian immigrants, as well as some knowledge about Haiti's history. So I'll just invite people to share comments or questions verbally or in the chat, and we'll move through this portion of our conversation that way. Melina, go ahead.
I just wanted to kick us off by giving a big thank you to James, because I think it takes some courage to tell the truth, but I also feel such a sense of relief when I hear it. And so even though it makes me feel angry and sort of disappointed at the depths of what I see as evil foreign policy on the part of the US, I think it's really important to call it out. And so I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge on the ground and the brief history lesson, and also, you know, your call to action.
Thank you. And I really appreciate the fact that you are giving me this opportunity, and also for other people to know what's going on in Haiti, so that they can make the change that they would like to see in a better world, and also toward Haiti.
Thanks, James. I have Alejandra next, and then we'll go to Beth. Oh, Alejandra, you're muted.
My gratitude, James. Thank you so much. This is it's a difficult conversation, but I have a comment and a question. And yes, although we're concentrating on U.S. policy, I also want to, hey, the responsibility is of those in the United States as well. And I say this because I think in the imaginary of the U.S., it's almost like, hey, Haiti is always in a crisis. But somehow that has not been connected to the government's U.S. policy. And so that there's a sense of, well, it's the Haitians themselves, right? And I think that that's very important, we're having this conversation, and I'm hoping curricula around the country, that somehow that's part of how we educate citizens, and not, I don't know, hey, I'm beyond citizens. I don't even use that word anymore. Sorry, erase that from my mouth. And so that's the sense, right? That, oh, Haiti, of course it's Haiti. No, it's, it's U.S. policy. It's complicated. It's there's an amazing history about the courage and the resilience and still Haiti continues, right? And so I just wanted, that's kind of my preaching moment. But my question, James, is also about the U.S. and the role that the Haitian diaspora has played and can play. Not that they should be the only responsible ones, but I know that it is those of us in the diaspora from our countries that have an added responsibility once we're in the belly of the beast, so to speak. So if you want to comment on that.
No, I think, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I mean, look, I know, again, having lived in the US and having come back to Haiti is two different things. The perception that I had of Haiti in the United States and being on the ground and seeing firsthand and experiencing firsthand what's happening is differently completely experienced. And a lot of Haitians, believe it or not, in the diaspora are unable to understand, because they're looking at it from the perspective of what everybody else is telling them. Or we have Haiti fatigue. You know, there's Haiti fatigue. Yeah, guess what? In Haiti, we have international aid, international interference fatigue. You know, you had the 2010 earthquake. The whole world will raise something like $10 billion. What happened to the money? You know, at this point, a lot of us in Haiti are getting the impression that, hey, maybe we are being used. Our misery is meant to enrich everybody else. You know, right after the earthquake, you had a situation where we had an election, which, by the way, happened way too soon. And then there was a candidate that was heavily US favored that did not make it to the final round. And then all of a sudden, the US intervened and declared that this person should become, not only go to the next round, and then eventually guaranteeing that this person would win. That was Martelly. And the Martelly administration, and because you can't run for two consecutive terms, then he selected Moïse to complete the second term. In the last 10 years, between the two of them, they have been the most corrupt government in Haiti, the most corrupt regime in Haiti. So now you're talking of a situation where $10 billion in aid for the earthquake, supposedly, we don't know what happened to it. And then to add on top of that, you had a government that was imposed onto us that stole another $5 billion from Venezuela. You know, so at this point, we seriously have international interference, whatever you want to call it, fatigue. You know, we're tired of it because, as you just said, people who don't know the situation, they're blaming Haitians. Oh, Haitians, if only they would know how to run their country, etc. When were we given the opportunity to run our own country? When? What we did in 1804 was a game changer. You know, we were supposed to continue on with the Haitian dream, which is we were supposed to create our own society as we see fit, which is a very common, simple. You know, every country is allowed to go through their own experience, to go through their own revolution if they need to, and they are allowed to create the society that they want to create. We haven't been given this opportunity, but most definitely in the last century. That hasn't been the case, and it still hasn't been the case.
Thank you, James.
I have Beth next.
Thank you, James, for your courage and commitment. And I totally agree with you that Haiti is being punished for taking a stand against slavery. I mean, even today, there's like a commitment to this kind of collective punishment. And I agree totally with what you were saying about the need to support people inside to be able to rule themselves and to find whatever the solutions are to the problems, and as well as to change US policy. And I'm wondering, considering the channels of corruption and collaboration with the US, how do you think is the best way to support people on the ground? Are there emerging networks of social movements or people? I wonder if you have ideas about that.
Yeah, I do. There is an organization in Haiti. Really, it's not an organization per se. It's how do you call it? The civil society in Haiti has taken upon themselves to say enough is enough, and they started this movement a few months ago to propose solution by Haitians and for Haitians. So one of which is to install, for example, a provisional government that will pretty much weed out all the corrupt officials, including the one that the U.S. pretty much picked to be the leader of the transitional government right now. And this has gotten a lot of track in Haiti, with many civil society and even political parties signing on as being a real solution to the Haitian problems by Haitians, so that Haitians can actually regain their country back. There was a U.S. special envoy to Haiti, Mr. Daniel Foote. He was put in charge to facilitate, how do you call it, discussions among Haitians to come up with a Haitian solution. And he resigned last week. And I'm sure many of you have seen his resignation letter, which has caused a lot of controversy since then. And he pretty much blamed U.S. puppeteering as being the root cause of the political crisis in Haiti. Mm-hmm. And more than anything, he favors the solution that was proposed by the commission that I mentioned. And lately, there's also been a few senators, and I forgot their names, that are voicing their opinion as to, this is a viable solution for Haiti that should be taken seriously. Meanwhile, there was a guy that replaced Daniel Foote. He came to Haiti just yesterday or a couple of days ago, and he's saying the right thing. He wants to listen to Haitians, et cetera, et cetera. And then he's saying that the solution that was proposed by the commission should somehow merge with a solution that is being proposed by the current transitional government, which nobody wants. It's as if you have to negotiate with your terrorists, so to speak. I mean, we are tired of the situation. It's a viable option, and really, because the United States helped create that situation, they can help resolve the situation by marginalizing those that are holding the country hostage, including many members that are in the current provisional government. So if you want to know the name, I can send it to you in the chat in a few minutes or via email later. But it's called, if I believe correctly, it's called in French is Commission pour une solution haïtienne, or the Commission for a Haitian Solution. And they've been making some serious noises, and people in the United States are picking up on it, and I'm hoping that will continue to happen.
Thank you.
Welcome.
We have 7 or 8 minutes still for conversation and questions. If people want to share them verbally or in the chat, I have one here that I'd like to ask you, James. I know you work with youth, which is, of course, a necessary part of making change. So I don't know if you might like to tell us a little bit about the youth program you work with and how we might support you, or other youth programs that it would be helpful for us to know about.
Great, thank you. As I mentioned, I moved back to Haiti to run an organization that was using sports for social change in Léogâne. I had over 400 kids in my program, and it was through soccer we were able to teach them about gender equality, reforestation project, recycling project, etc. So it was a great project, but my only concern, and by the way, that was an American organization, I ended up leaving the organization mainly for the fact that, what comes next? It's great to provide the kids with an opportunity to play football, etc. But at the end of the day, those kids had no skills. They couldn't reach their dream of playing professional soccer if they wanted to. So I really started to focus on that. And I started to do some research, and I stumbled onto an organization in Ghana called The Right to Dream. So I'm trying to, without talking too much about it, it's a soccer academy that provides kids with two pathways. Either they use soccer as a means to achieve higher education, such as getting a scholarship to play soccer in the United States, or essentially to become professional soccer players. So I'm still working toward achieving that goal. I mean, obviously, the current situation in Haiti the last couple of years has not made it easy. So that's really what I'm working on. And in the meantime, I'm teaching at the American school in Haiti, which is a completely different population. I went from kids that had nothing to now kids whose parents owned everything. And it has allowed me to see a different perspective of the country. So while I'm working there, I'm still doing after school activities such as soccer, teaching soccer to kids, to poor kids in the neighborhood, and allowing them to have a space at the moment to not have to worry about the security situation. So if anybody's interested, I would be more than happy again to send them more information about my long-term goal, which is to open a Right to Dream like academy in Haiti.
Thanks so much, James. And because I'm not sure you can see the chat, I'll just share. I think people are really eager to be in touch with you about your work. Yeah, and I think looking for ways to concretely plug in and support. We'll follow up with emails to folks on this call with some concrete information there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right, I think we've got space for one more question or comment. Otherwise, I'll turn it to Sean to move us to thinking about some next steps. All right, Sean, take it away.
So again, James, thank you very much for your time, your perspective, your experience, and the information you've shared with us today. Once we have information, it's important to act on that information. We're not here to read every book that was ever written and do nothing. We're here to do something. So we're looking at action steps. First, educate, agitate, organize. Some of the ways you can educate yourself: you can join the Finger Lakes Rapid Response Network newsletter, where you can get updates on events like these. And I'm sure we can send out a message to everybody here today just with action steps. There's also a Code Pink talk on Haiti scheduled for Tuesday. So if you're looking for more information on what's happening in Haiti, you can join that call on Tuesday. There are also programs like Kuslar, which is the, I don't remember what the C is for. Melina, a little help?
The committee on U.S. and Latin American, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So they occasionally put on courses related to just different things happening around Latin America, which give you the policy background and the historical background to understand what kinds of actions would be effective. Thank you, Melina, for putting that in the chat. Beyond educating yourself, there is a need to agitate and organize. We've heard consistently today that U.S. policy has been problematic for a number of reasons and needs to be addressed. One of the things the United States could do is begin to respect the international human right to development, which would allow countries like Haiti to be able to follow their own path instead of being redirected by the international community consistently. There's also a need for the United States to ratify international human rights treaties. If we ratify international human rights treaties, then we will, one, allow our own citizens access to some of the benefits of international human rights systems, allow residents, immigrants, refugees that are here access to those same systems. And that would be an additional way to pressure the US to implement policies thinking of the benefit of the countries that we're affecting rather than the benefit of shareholders or whoever drives our international policy. One of the other things we could be advocating and asking our politicians to do is replace the TPS system with refugee protections and to strengthen those refugee protections, including things like a policy for climate refugees. As long as the US is avoiding obligations to refugee populations through using the TPS system, we're not going to be able to protect people that need protection. And if Haitians were granted refugee status in the US instead of TPS, they could integrate here and become those global citizens with access to US resources, which can be shared with their families back home. That's hard to do under the current system. In the United States, we can also support the Inter-American system of human rights, support anti-corruption reforms, which consistently impact the world. We also need to pay attention to special envoys and the UN special rapporteur reports, which often come with a list of things that can be done, suggestions to implement. I know the Commission for Haitian Solution is one such example, which James mentioned. And we can also support Haitian-run programs modeled on successful international programs, like the Right to Dream in Ghana, and like the program that James is building. So we'll send out some specifics via email so that you guys can stay involved. And again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest. And let's go make a change.
And thank you, Sean. I just wanted to add, I'm thinking locally, right? Here we are in upstate New York. Speaking for Geneva, the Finger Lakes Times, the local paper, it's easy to sometimes be able to say, I'm going to write a guest column. I am, a letter to the editor. So to get that perspective out, if you are, again, Penyan, Geneva, upstate New York, check out how is Haiti being taught, right? And I know curriculum gets complicated, but offer, hey, find out, I think we are equipped now with information. Is there a way to reach out to the schools in the area, right? Because I think that it is at the level of educating our youth as well, right? I'm at a college campus. We have those conversations with the students organizing social justice events. And so I think that for us to also think of that, the power of locality, right? The access we have to local newspapers, right? The access we may have to teachers, to after school programs, and so to really begin to reconfigure, because it's local. It is at the level of local where things begin. And so next time someone says, like it just happened to me recently, well, Haiti, I mean, they've always been in a crisis, stand up for Haiti, right? I say, no, let me tell you about Haiti. Let me tell you about our responsibility and about the U.S. government's responsibility in the case of Haiti. So I just wanted to add those as well.
And I think we have a couple closing words from one of our organizers. But before that, I just wanted to check in, James, and see if there were any final words that you wanted to share with us. No pressure, of course.
No, sure. Thank you. Again, thank you again for this opportunity. And honestly, just thank you for caring. Thank you for caring, because like I said, sometimes we feel that has been the case in Haiti for the last, oh my God, I can't even mention how long, but we feel like we're not being heard. We feel like, people are talking on our behalf and nobody's listening. And then worse, they are blaming us for the situation Haiti is in. So thank you for caring. That's all I have to say.
Okay, so I think that unfortunately, right, we've come to the end, but it's at the end that it's a beginning. We will, we hope to do more emergency, not last minute, but emergency responses, educational forums. Be on the lookout for our emails. Feel free to let us know, right? There's a burning question, there's an issue, share it with us. we'll make it happen. You know, we're learning as we go along, but we're going to polish our skills because in this world running so quickly, we have to just chase the media, correct what's going on if possible, and have these forums so that we can have conversations and action steps. And I think as parting words, I would urge all of us here, within a week or so, do something for Haiti. Whether you contact your local paper, right? Whether you have a conversation at the school, whether you organize a little chat that you can say, hey, let's talk about what's happening in Haiti and what has been happening. And it's now centuries of what's been happening in Haiti. So I would urge it. You don't have to let us know, but go for it. Just run with it because we've been informed. We've been enlightened by James, and thank you so much, James. Now I think it's our responsibility, and I promise to do that here in Guatemala. You know, the work continues, and I thank you all very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody, and that while we've been speaking, an idea is emerging in our chat discussion. So James, I'm sorry, I don't think you can see the chat because you've called in. So I'm going to save it and email it to everybody that's on the call. And hopefully we can get the recording processed as well, if anybody would like to review that. But the idea in the chat that came up was to organize a Solidarity Day for Haiti in the various colleges in the region. And I think we have representatives from at least 4 institutions at that level. And there might be something else that we could do as well. So we'll follow up to invite all of you here to participate in that and anything else that we can think of as well. And over to you, Hannah, for final words.
So that was going to be it. I was just going to share with James the chat. So I think we know it was a meaningful forum when people are mobilized to act and not just act as individuals, but act collectively. And so really moved by the impetus to act from all of you and the chance to get to work with all of you again in the near future in building our solidarity together. So thank you so much, James, for providing the impetus for our next steps.
Yeah, thank you, guys. And I'm looking forward to getting more information about the protest that you mentioned. Yeah.
Excellent. We'll be in touch with everybody. Have a great afternoon, folks.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye, guys. Adios. Ciao.
Adios. Adieu. Au revoir.
Adieu, everybody.
Au revoir.
Thank
Y
you.
que viva Haití. Okay.
Claro. Viva. Vale.
Bye.
Gracias.